Hey, yo, I want to talk about numbers, just not the show. I actually mean the literal mathematical digits, but I like my videos to have a visual element, and rather than whenever I talk about numbers just displaying something like an 8 on the screen, the best number don't at me, instead I'm going to show a picture of these two handsome chaps. I've never watched the show and don't know who these two are, so apologies if these actors have been cancelled. This article by head designer Mark Rosewater is the reason I want to discuss said numbers, because in it he explains why the previous cheaper 15-card draft boosters had to be discontinued and replaced by the more expensive 14-card play boosters. On a quick side note, I've previously had a little pushback from people for wording it that way in the past, but if you look at this section of the article, you'll see he says, "Because set boosters were the more popular item, we decided to approach the problem by figuring out how to make a set booster playable, meaning that no, play boosters aren't a draft booster with more rares, but instead a draftable set booster." It's a minor pedantic thing, but enough of you have tried to correct me that I thought I'd mention it. Because draft boosters have been discontinued, you can't buy them anymore, there's no comparable item for the same price point, and play boosters are an updated set booster, not an updated draft booster. So I feel regardless of what Mr. Rosewater says about how the creation of play boosters was to prevent draft boosters from stop being a thing, that's exactly what has happened, and it is accurate to say draft boosters have been discontinued. Now the reason I mention this article at all is because of this section right here. Your rare mythic rare card ratio per dollar spent will be staying the same. Mark Rosewater has faced some backlash on his blog lately, many people are voicing their frustration at him, and some are even calling him a liar. I talked more about that and the meaning of the word value in this video right here, so go check that out if you want to know more. But in essence, I feel this statement is quantifiable, as in we can use it to test whether what he said has turned out to be true. Using numbers, so that's what I've done. Disclaimer time, because there's some things you need to know before we go any further. First off, as evidenced by the release date of this video where I first started talking about this subject, you'll see that today's video has been in production for a very long time. I'm not sure when this will be released, but I'll be amazed if we don't have information on at least the prices and contents of the Spider-Man Play Booster boxes, if not the Avatar ones by the time this goes live. However, I don't have that information at time of writing, so it won't be factored into today's equations. Secondly, I crunched all these numbers with the help of my maths friend using this spreadsheet, but I'm not going to share this spreadsheet because he's the owner and quite frankly I don't want to dox him. Thirdly, it's not math, it's maths. It's short for mathematics with an S. Unless you're calling these pant, then I don't want to hear it. Fourth, I have Dyscalculia. It's like dyslexia but for numbers. Magic the Gathering is an absolutely wild choice of game for me to love considering. I am so bad at working out combat damage. And just the number 7 in general can screw off. All my Dyscalculia bros in the comments sound off if you know my pain. But the reason I mention it is that's why I got outside help when crunching these numbers. Meaning if you ask me anything about the calculations in the comments, I almost certainly won't be able to answer. But all of the sources of information I used today will either be shown on screen or linked in the description if you want to crunch these numbers yourself. With one big asterisk to that, which I'll get to at the end. So if you're going to ask, do I personally know for a fact that all of these equations are completely accurate? The answer is no, because I can't. But as I just hinted at with that asterisk, there's an even bigger reason for that I'll get to, so the point is kind of moot anyway. And lastly, before we get to the numbers, I want to make you a promise which is a little unusual for me. Unbiased. I know on this channel I can often give some pretty hot takes, but I want to be more impartial and objective than that here. I'm just going to give you the numbers and tell you my findings, but then I'm going to stop and let you come to your own conclusions. Now today's video is obviously not a proper science experiment and I'm not claiming it to be. And I do have my own opinion because that's just me and what I'm about, but I promise I'm going to try not to sway your opinion one way or another here. I've included as much relevant data as I could and I'll be as transparent as I can be. I'm asking the question, was Mark Rosewater right when he sold us on the idea that your rare mythic rare card ratio per dollar spent will be staying the same? And like I say, I'm not going to answer that question today, I'm just going to show you my findings, but I would be interested to hear your thoughts, so let me know them in the comments below. Oh, and lastly for real this time, I quickly want to mention my Patreon. If you like this video, then please come help support me to bring you more like it. We have weekly opinion polls, a behind the scenes blog, early access to audio only versions of these episodes, some bonus content at some point I'm sure, and you can get your name credited on screen too. I have many tiers with many rewards, so if you're able to, please come check out my Patreon, link in the description below. Right, let's crunch some numbers. The Lost Caverns of Ixalan was the last standard legal set to release which contained draft boosters. And in terms of the sale price per box at time of release, from my research it was roughly on par with that of the most recent sets preceding it, meaning we're going to take that to assume the average price of an average draft booster box was $120. Draft booster boxes contained 36 packs, and each one of those had a guaranteed rare or mythic rare, meaning 36 rares per box. And while these numbers won't always be exactly right for every previously released set, in fact I'd say $120 is actually quite high as an average from what I remember, but for our purposes today and in the interest of impartiality, I did find those boxes on sale for that price at time of release, so I'm happy to assume they're a fair example going forward. When attempting to work out our rare mythic rare card ratio per dollar spent, which helpfully abbreviates to RMRCRPDS, we can see that looking at these numbers we have a RMRCRPDS of 0.3 rare mythic rare cards per dollar spent. Would it have been easier to say that the dollar cost per rare using this method was $3.33? Yes, absolutely it would, because it's essentially the same maths. But that's not how Mark Rosewater worded it. He said cards per dollar, not dollars per card. Meaning the more confusing 0.3 is the baseline RMRCRPDS we'll be working with today. Now, play boosters don't have a guaranteed number of rares per pack, and thus it's much more difficult to work out the average number of them per box. But on the back of each pack there's a breakdown of the percentage chances of finding additional rares, which means using these percentages we're able to work out an average number of rares per play booster box. Again, I want to stress on average that you'll be likely to open. So, using Murders at Karlov Manor as an example, you have a 37% chance of getting 2 rares in a pack, a 4% chance of getting 3 rares, and a less than 1% chance of getting 4 rares. Using those numbers we can calculate the average percentage chance of how many rares you could expect per pack, to which, after trying and failing to the point of frustration to explain to me how that's calculated, my maths man finally gave up and said, take the exact number, multiply it by the number of cards you're expecting, to get its weight in the average per pack. To me that makes sense. Which, I don't know man, maybe it does? Dyscalculia. But I can say that I trust him and his math skills, so I assume this all tracks. Using that average number of rares per pack and multiplying it by the number of packs per box, which is 36 in this instance, we can work out the average number of rares in a box, which for Karlov Manor is 53.28, up from the guaranteed 36 rares in a box for Ixalan. However, we also need to factor in price, which, amazingly for Karlov Manor, was actually cheaper at $110 per box on release. That set kinda flopped. Meaning we now have a cost per rare of $2.06, cheaper than that of the $3.33 draft booster box, and a RMRCRPDS of 0.48 rare mythic rare cards per dollar spent, which, when compared to our draft boosters 0.3, shows that Murders at Karlov Manor is actually better for the customer in terms of the number of rares mythic rares you'll get per dollar. If you wanted to get even more granular than that with the numbers, you can, because WotC actually includes specific percentage chances per slot in a pack on their website. For instance, 1 in 8 Murders at Karlov Manor play boosters, 12.5%, features a card from special guests or the list, and 10 rare and mythic rare reprints replacing a common Murders at Karlov Manor card 1.56% of the time. Though just note I'm not going to include those numbers today, as they're not directly needed to work out the RMRCRPDS of a pack, and instead are best used to double check that the percentages on the back of the pack which are needed to work out the RMRCRPDS are in fact accurate. I will still link to the pages that list them in the description below, however, if you want to see them for yourself. And with that being said, let's finally look at these numbers. Zoom in. I know we've already done it, but for posterity, Murders at Karlov Manor, release date the 9th of February 2024. The back tells us that the chance of 2 cards is 37%, 3 is 4%, and 4 is less than 1%. So that means the number of rares per box on average was 53.28. By my research, the cost of a box at time of release was $110, which is $1.27 cheaper per rare than draft boxes at $2.06 per rare, giving us a better RMRCRPDS of 0.48. Outlaws of Thunder Junction, release date the 19th of April 2024. The back tells us the chance of 2 cards is 41%, 3 is 12%, and 4 is less than 1%. The number of rares per box on average was 60.48, which is high, probably due to the big score on breaking news cards intended as a supplemental set getting rolled into the main product. By my research, the cost of a box at time of release was $120, which is $1.35 cheaper than that of draft boosters at $1.98 per rare, giving us a much better RMRCRPDS of 0.5. Modern Horizons 3, which I'm not sure should count as it wasn't standard legal, but it did have play boosters, so release date the 14th of June 2024. The back tells us that the chance of 2 cards is 34%, 3 is 6%, and 4 is less than 1%. The number of rares per box on average was 53.82. By my research, the cost of a box at time of release was a massive $250, but again is explained by it being a premium product, which is $1.31 more expensive per rare than that of draft boosters, at a whopping $4.65 per rare, giving us a much worse RMRCRPDS of 0.22 compared to Draft Booster's RMRCRPDS of 0.3. MaRo, which I would like to remind you they say these sets are in production for years before they're released, meaning these numbers we're about to look at were planned before the release of Karlov Manor. The back tells us that the chance of 2 cards is drastically reduced from the 37s and 41s of previous standard sets down to just 23%. 3 is now also down to only 1%, and 4 is still less than 1%. The number of rares per box on average was 4554, also down from Karlov Manor. By my research, the cost of a box at time of release was $150, so has gone up, which is $0.04 cheaper than our draft booster boxes at $3.29 per rare, which in fairness gives us a spot on RMRCRPDS of 0.3, but again that is still down from previous play booster sets though. Duskmourn House of Horror, release date the 27th of September 2024. The back tells us that the chance of 2 cards remains the same from MaRo at 23%, 3 is again 1%, and 4 is still less than 1%. The number of rares per box on average was also 4554. By my research, the cost of a box at time of release was $140, which is $0.26 cheaper than that of draft boosters at $3.07 per rare, giving us a slightly better RMRCRPDS of 0.33. Foundations, release date the 15th of November 2024. The back tells us the chance of 2 cards is 26%, 3 is 2%, and 4 is less than 1%. The number of rares per box on average was 4734. By my research, the cost of a box at time of release was $140, which is $0.38 cheaper than that of draft boosters at $2.96 per rare, giving us a better RMRCRPDS of 0.34. Innistrad Remastered, again another non-standard premium set with play boosters. Release date the 24th of January 2025. The back tells us the chance of 2 cards is 26%, 3 is 3%, and 4 is less than 1%. The number of rares per box on average was 48.6. By my research, the cost of a box at time of release was $175, which is $0.27 more expensive than that of draft boosters at $3.60 per rare, giving us a slightly worse RMRCRPDS of 0.28. Aether Drift marks a big change as every set from here on out will only have 30 packs, down from the previous 36. The back tells us the chance of 2 cards is 26%, 3 is 2%, and 4 is less than 1%. The number of rares per box on average was only 39.45, not far off the 36 guaranteed in draft boosters. By my research, the cost of a box was $120, same price as previous draft boxes, which is $0.29 cheaper than that of draft boosters at $3.04 per rare, giving us a slightly better RMRCRPDS of 0.33. Tarkir Dragonstorm, release date the 11th of April 2025. The back is supposed to tell us the chance of 2 cards is 26%, 3 is 2%, and 4 is less than 1%. And the astute amongst you will notice that not only is this not a play booster, not only has it already been opened, but it's not even in English. Apparently Dr. Hands was mistaken when he said he had an unopened pack for this video. So instead we're going to take the collector booster from this unopened gift bundle for Modern Horizons 3 and pretend it's a Tarkir play booster. Again, imagine these are Tarkir play booster cards. The number of rares per box on average was 39.45. By my research, the cost of a box of Tarkir Dragonstorm at time of release was $120, which is $0.29 cheaper than that of draft booster boxes at $3.04 per rare, giving us a slightly better RMRCRPDS of 0.33. Final Fantasy, a Universes Beyond non-Magic IP set released the 13th of June 2025. The back tells us the chance of 2 cards is 28%, 3 is 3%, and 4 is less than 1%. The number of rares per box on average was 40.65. By my research, the cost of a box at time of release was a ridiculous $210 for 30 packs, which is $1.83 more expensive than that of draft boosters at a crazy $5.17 per rare, giving us a drastically worse RMRCRPDS of 0.19. And finally, Edge of Eternity's release date the 1st of August 2025. The back tells us the chance of 2 rare cards is 30%, 3 is 3%, and 4 is less than 1%. The number of rares per box on average was 41.25. By my research, the cost of a box at time of release was $140, which is $0.06 more expensive than that of draft boosters at $3.39 per rare, giving us a worse RMRCRPDS again than that of our draft booster boxes at 0.29. And that's all of the sets that have released so far that contain play boosters. I've broken all of that information down into charts. This is the average number of rares per play booster box over time, and if we add the trend line, you'll see that even though all of them do currently contain more than the 36 guaranteed rares of draft booster boxes, the total number of rares and mythics you get in a box is on a downward decline. This is the dollar price you'd need to spend on average to find a rare, or if you prefer, how much each card in a box cost if you only count rares and mythics. Again, if we add the trend line, you can see the cards are becoming more expensive, and you're having to spend more and more money to find a rare as time goes on. This chart is the price difference per rare in comparison to the cost per rare from draft boosters. This is a little harder to judge because most of the time it's actually comparable, with play boosters in fact frequently being a bit cheaper, but the trend line still shows that you're getting a worse deal over time as the price creeps up, mostly due to the fact the early play boosters were a much better deal for the amount of rares you got before they lowered the odds. And in fairness, just exactly how much worse the Universes Beyond Final Fantasy set was for players in terms of rares for your money. Which leaves us with our RMRCRPDS number. And again, with the trend line you can see your rare mythic rare card ratio per dollar spent is going down over time. Less rares for your money. And this chart makes that fact even more apparent, which is the RMRCRPDS of the packs in comparison to the RMRCRPDS of the draft booster box. The trend line once again showing a decline in how much the player can expect back for their money. But interestingly, if we combine all those numbers and work out an average, we'll see that compared to the Lost Caverns of Ixalan's RMRCRPDS of 0.3, all play booster boxes when looked at as a whole also have an average RMRCRPDS of 0.3. So does this prove Mark Roswater right when he said your rare mythic rare card ratio per dollar spent will be staying the same? I'm going to leave that up to you. Perhaps this overall average of every set combined coming out to the same number is enough for you to say yes. But if you're someone who doesn't buy one of every box, and only bought the Final Fantasy pack say, then it could be argued that you're left with a RMRCRPDS that's much worse in isolation. Meaning this line by Mark Roswater to you may feel like a big lie. How do you feel about the numbers? Not the show. And also maybe the show. Let me know. Are overall trends important, or should we be ignoring outliers? Tell me in the comments below, but wait, because before you make up your mind, there's one last thing to consider. Remember how earlier on I mentioned one big asterisk? Well, I'm so sorry to do this to you, but you'll have to join me for part 4 of this series for me to explain it. Because I think there's a huge argument that could be made for the idea that none of this data matters. And not just mine, but the data provided by WotC themselves. And I think it may be intentionally so. I think there's evidence to suggest WotC are only pretending to be transparent with their odds. And if you take the time to look into it as I have, you'll soon realise exactly how much it is they're trying to hide from you. But that'll be for next time. Today, the only conclusive thing I have to end on is I think we can all agree I've done a fantastic job of keeping my promise and being unbiased in the presentation of these numbers. Hey Scarlett, what's the thumbnail for this video going to be? Oh, goddammit. Thank you very much for watching this video, and thank you to everyone that supports me, like 27 publications, Eggboy the Particle that permeates all existence, Blank Space, Wanpako Jozu, Miss Murder, a random Patreon, Ominous Jazz, and the rest of my patrons whose names are on screen now. I'd also like to thank the sponsor for this video, me and my Patreon page, where you can get your name credited on screen too. Check it out in the link in the description below. Hit the like button, leave a comment, install an ad block, and most importantly subscribe and share this video with a friend. Hit the notification bell and do all those things the algorithm loves. I don't think the algorithm loves me telling you to install an ad block, maybe I need to stop doing that. Don't install an ad block, wink. If you agree or disagree with any of my points, or you want to see me do a video on another subject, let me know and I will see you next time.